Hey there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have 5 cards with 1 kit using the February 2019 My Monthly Hero Kit. This kit is still available, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at what comes in the kit. These kits are always such a great value. They come with so much in there, and for the $34.99 you really can't beat it. So they always come packaged really pretty with some ribbon, and I don't end up using the ribbon, but it's really pretty. And this is like a 1920s kind of set. I love the little images in it, and the sayings are awesome. I love that. You're the cat's meow, you're the bee's knees, have a roaring good time, kick up your heels, hey there doll face. Some really good sentiments. And this is a 6x8 clear set. Of course, it also comes with the coordinating dies. I like to stack mine or package mine with my set, and I have these Marietta magnets. I've talked about these in the past. They're 5x7, and they usually just fit the dies perfectly, and they hold pretty well. And yeah, I'll have those linked down below if that's something that you're interested in. But I like to keep everything together, and so that makes it really easy. It also comes with some embellishments. It comes with these Art Deco mirror confetti, a lot of them actually. It comes with a really cool stencil. This is a 4.5 by 5 3/4, and it also comes with 2 reflective papers, one in gold and silver. So I'll be honest with you, as great as I think this set is, I did have a hard time right out of the gate trying to come up with ideas. So I went to trusty old Pinterest and I made a 1920s board, and I just looked up 1920s, and you would be surprised at the amazing, just, I don't know, stuff that's all over Pinterest. So if you ever get stuck, I know this is not any sort of earth-shattering idea, but check out Pinterest, and you might be surprised at, even if it's just color combos, or like I'm showing here, you can do feathers or diamonds with this one, and it really got the creative juices flowing. So I got a little bit more excited after checking those out. My first card was definitely inspired by something I saw on Pinterest. I just took the color combination mostly, and I'm going to pull, we are going to go old school. Since this is a 1920s kind of set, I am pulling out my old large circle nestabilities, and I'm also going to pull out my labels Trio Nestabilities, and I just have these in a magnet board. I don't think they even make this thing anymore, but if I can find it, I think it was by Something Cuts. If I can find it, I'll link that down below. And I've just got a piece of Nina cream cardstock, and then I've put that inside my mini Misty. And I'm going to put a couple of the images, the little dancing images, and one of the sentiments inside there. And I will condition those stamps a bit just with my hands, because the oils will condition it. Take a little sip of tea. And then I'm going to ink those up with my Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I don't plan to do any Copic coloring, but this is the black ink that I had sitting there, and it worked out just fine. I made sure to stamp it out a couple times. And while I had my mini Misty out, I grabbed another image, and also just a piece of red cardstock that I had in my stash that I have cut down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And I'm going to ink that up a few times. I just got it, across the bottom of the card. I'll ink it up probably about 3 or 4 times, I think. I just wanted to make sure this is textured cardstock. That's why I inked it up so many times. And then I'm going to flip it around so that I have that same image on top and bottom. I just love the little deco pieces that are in the stamp set. They're really, really pretty, and you could do a lot with them. So now I'm going to start using my die cuts. So I will tape down that circle nestability, and then I'm going to also tack down those coordinating dies with just some washi tape that I have sitting on my desk. And then I'm going to run that through my Big Shot machine after have everything tacked down. And that's what it looks like all cut out and ready to go. So now, simple, I'm going to start adhering everything to my card base, which is just that same Nina Cream cardstock. And I'm just using some liquid glue so that I have a little bit of wiggle room. I will put that on the back of my circle that I cut out with the circle nestabilities. And then I'm going to use foam tape on the rest of my images and that sentiment as well. So I'll peel off that backing paper. It's amazing how much time it takes to actually put some foam tape on a tiny image like that. And I didn't tack that down just yet, because I wanted to make sure that I had my images lined up well before I actually push down. So I do have a little bit of time here. Nothing's completely tacked down. And then when I have things where I want them, I will tack them down. I'm going to use my T ruler so that I can make sure that sentiment is straight. It only took me, 17 years to discover this tool, but now I can't live without it. For a final bit of embellishment, I do grab the Jelly Roll Clear Star pen, and I thought that this just needed something, but I'm going to be real honest with you. I ain't digging it. I ain't digging it, Dollface. I don't like what I did here. I mean, it's fine. It's very subtle. You can't really see it that much unless you're obviously looking at the card. But it's, you know, it's okay. I did use it on a couple of the images themselves, on his bow tie and on just her feather and stuff. And that'll end up finishing off this card. So I like how it ended up turning out, but I don't like the little stitching I put on it. Card number 2 ranks up there as one of my favorites of this set of 5. So I just have a piece of Neenah cardstock that I have trimmed down to 4 inches by 5 1/4, and I've stuck that in my mini Misty. And I'm going to work on a background. So I've grabbed one of those images that's kind of like the deco background, or deco, you know, just really cool background image. And I've inked that up with some old paper Distress Oxide ink. And it's subtle, but it's nice on this Neenah cream cardstock. And I flip my paper and then I put it in the opposite corner as well. And then I'm going to grab a couple other images and I'm going to stick those on there. I'm going to try to just build a background that's subtle, but it just gives you kind of an illusion that something's going on in the background. So I've grabbed another one of those little deco images. And I'm thinking about sticking, so I can see if I can stamp these at the same time, but it's just not going to work. So I pull off the people dancing, and I'm going to stamp that one image. I'm kind of just checking on placement because I do plan to have something popped up on the side there, but I'm going to keep using that old paper Distress Oxide ink for all my images. And then you'll just see that this is the background that I have set up. And I just love how that old paper works on that Neenah cream cardstock. For my sentiment, I've grabbed that doll face sentiment. I just think this is such a pretty sentiment. It's just fun. And I'm going to ink that up with some VersaFine Onyx Black. I want it to be nice and crisp and black. And there's my background. So now I grabbed a new piece of Neenah cardstock in that cream color. I'm going to stamp this image of this young lady on there, and I'm going to use Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I'm not going to show you all the coloring because it's super simple. There is nothing to it. There's hardly any layering whatsoever. So I'm just going to stamp that out, and by the magic of video editing, there it is. And now I am going to trim that out and get it ready to run through my Sizzix Sidekick. I've said this a zillion times, all day, every day. If I can fit an image through my, in a die cut through my Sizzix Sidekick, I will do it because it just is so much easier than pulling out my Big Shot. I love my Big Shot. I just don't have room. So I've put Scotch foam tape on the back of that Trio Nestability, and I'm going to stick that down on my card front. And then for a final bit of embellishment, I'm going to use those confetti. What are those? The confetti mirror, Deco Art mirror confetti. And I've just stuck that stuck those in a little dish. And that little dish was from like the Target dollar spot, I think. And I'm using my crystal katana along with some liquid glue, and I'm just going to adhere those little dots down. I'm just using the gold ones, just sporadically. And if you have the crystal katana and you find that it's not working sometimes, it's only because you might have gotten glue on the tip. It's very easy to just wipe it off even with your hand, and then that thing is back to working like a champ. I love that thing. And then I will adhere that to my card base, which is just some Neenah Desert Storm. And that will finish off card number 2. Definitely love how this one turned out. I love that subtle background. Okay, I know I said number 2 is probably my favorite, but number 3 is right up there too. So I grabbed that stencil that came in the kit. This is a really pretty stencil, and I grabbed some cardstock that I had in my stash. It's just a blue, almost like a blue-gray that I had in my stash. And this one measured 4 inches by 5 1/4, and I'm just taping that down with some washi tape. I probably should have run it on my pant leg first because it was a little hard to get off later. But I'm going to use some of that Nuvo embellishment mousse. This is the Sea Spray Green that I got from my bestie, Erica. Shout out to you, girl. And so I'm just going to spread this all over the back. And I'm spreading this basically like you would put butter on toast. And so this stuff is a little interesting. It is, at least in my jar, it was a little bit chunky. So I decided I would just spread this on my glass mat and then kind of make it creamy again if that was possible. So I worked it around with my palette knife, and I was able to get it to, I don't know if just the action of, you know, the kinetic energy of moving it around was able to get it to kind of cream up a little bit. But this stuff just spread like butter. I'm telling you, this stuff is great. And I have heard that people have had issues with it drying out. So from what I understand, the best thing to do if you do get this is to keep that little foil wrap that comes on it. So keep that. That's why you can see mine still. And then when you go to close it up, make sure that you tighten that lid. You want to keep it nice and tight so that it's basically airlocked. And so yeah, that would be my suggestion. And that's what I did the first time I opened it, and it seems to be fine. So, I mean, so far, I mean, I've only had it since December, so it's only a couple months, but I really like this stuff. And I thought this color was so pretty on that blue-gray cardstock that I had. And I will scrape off the rest, and as you can see, lock that up. And then I will peel off the stencil, and then I'm going to take that to my sink. And I'm going to set this off to the side to dry. I'm going to clean up my mess and set this off to the side to dry. And while that's drying, I just have another piece of like a burgundy cardstock from my stash. I'm trying to use up all that cardstock I have in my stash, so I don't have a name for any of these. And I'm going to do some heat embossing onto it. So I've got my embossing buddy that I'm just rubbing all over that paper so that I don't get embossing powder where I don't want it. And I am inking up my images with Versamark ink, which is just a clear sticky ink. It can be used as a watermark ink or for embossing because it's sticky. And I'm stamping each of my images just using that Versamark ink, and then I will cover that with my embossing powder. And you can see that embossing buddy did a pretty darn good job. I don't have a lot of stray powder everywhere, so that's nice. And then I will heat set that till it is smooth and melted with my heat tool. And then I'm going to let that cool off, and I'll clean up my mess after I'm done. And once all that is ready to go, I'm going to take a scrap piece of that Nina cream cardstock along with some, this is Victorian Velvet Distress ink, and I've stamped out my sentiments using that Distress Oxide ink. And then I'll run my images through my Sizzix Sidekick with their matching dies, and they're all ready to go. So my background, this was about 10 minutes or so, and it was dry to the touch, but the paper still felt, I don't know, you know what it's like when it still kind of feels a little bit wet. So I think the top layer was pretty well dry, but underneath it was still a little bit wet. So I heated that up with my heat tool just to make sure that I didn't have any issues. And then I'm just going to use some foam tape on the back of that panel. I probably should have put it all over, but this worked out okay. I'll peel off that backing panel, and then I'm going to put it on. This piece of cardstock is just a little bit darker than the blue-gray that I originally had. And then I'll run also another circle nestability through my Sizzix Sidekick because I felt like it needed that. Each of my sentiments I have trimmed down, and I'm just kind of giving a slanted border to those, or slanted side. I will tack down that circle that I cut out using some liquid glue, and then I have backed everything with foam tape, and I'm going to start adhering all those images and those sentiments down onto my card. And I'm really loving this color combination and how this all turned out. That stencil is so pretty. You could use it with sprays, you could use it with Nouveau glitter paste, you could just do all kinds of things with it. I just thought this was so pretty. So there's card number 3. Card number 4 is actually a pretty easy one, but it really packs a punch because it uses both of those mirror cardstocks that came in the kit, along with that beautiful die, the big die, background die, just beautiful. So I'm going to tape that just because I don't want it to move in the die cutting process. I'm just taping it down, and then I'm gonna stick my Big Shot up on here so you have an idea. It is actually difficult to usually stick my Big Shot up on there, and as you can tell, I have dropped that plate so many times because I usually do it on my lap. Because trying to make room to do it is a pain in the rear. But I ran that through just a couple times to make sure, and it cut beautifully. It worked so well with my Sizzix Big Shot. And so I'm going to save that giant piece that came in the center because I'm going to use that on card number 5, but cleaned all that out. And then I ran it through one more time on a piece of the Nina Cream cardstock. I wasn't real careful about how I placed it on there, so I didn't get to keep any of those pieces other than the big one, which is what I wanted. So I'm going to stick this inside of my mini Misty. I'm going to use the mirrored one as just a base so that I can make sure that in case it doesn't stamp well the first time, I can stick it back in there exactly where I want it the second time. So I'm going to stamp out the sentiment, "You're the bee's knees." This sentiment makes me think of my kid, my son, all the time. It makes me giggle because he says cat's pajamas, but bee's knees, it just, just makes me giggle, and it makes me miss that kid so much. So I stamped it out with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which is just a black ink that's nice and crisp. And I'm going to glue down on my card base, which is some cream cardstock. I'm going to glue down a piece of that gold mirror cardstock. And then I'm going to use my liquid glue, not all over this die cut image, just on pieces that I think, and all around the outside, but just pieces that I think would maybe have an issue popping up, because I don't think it'd be overkill to do it all over. And so it just wasn't necessary. But this stuff was hard to film. As you can see, you'll see my face sometimes. You're going to see the camera, obviously. Clearly, it's not my best look today. But this stuff is a challenge to film. So I have stuck that down, knowing that I was going to have a little bit of the cream cardstock showing through. And I didn't mind. I actually liked that because I thought that tied in pretty well with the big panel that I'm sticking down now with some foam tape. So I cleared off that backing, and then I stuck that down. And then I'm going to, as a final bit of embellishment, just use those black confetti. And I'm just using my crystal katana once again, along with that liquid glue. And every once in a while I have issues because I've touched the glue on the tip. You don't want to do that. And so I just wipe that off with my finger. And then once again, it works like a dream. The crystal katana is definitely an investment, but I love this thing. I love it. It works great. So it's my baby. So I'm going to grab a few more of those confetti because I feel like it just could always use more. You can always use more confetti, right? And then another one up on top. And that'll finish off this card. I love how simple this one was. Hard to film, but super simple and really pretty in the end. Card number 5 is actually another really easy one. I'm going to use that stencil once again. I'm going to try something with a certain kind of an embossing powder that Hero Arts has. So I have taped that down. It really didn't matter because the Versamark ink pad that I'm using, and I'm just blotting all over that background, ended up sticking, and which was fine. It really wasn't a big deal. It didn't cause the stencil to move, but it caused the tape to not be sticky anymore. So I've just blotted that all over the background, and you can see it. You can see it because it's a watermark ink. And I'm going to cover that with my Hero Arts White Satin Pearl Embossing Powder, because I want to see how that looks. Basically, this satin pearl embossing powder is going to take on a darker form of whatever its background cardstock is. And you'll see that as I start to heat it. So this would be beautiful on any cardstock. It would just make a darker, just darker on whatever it is you're putting it on. So as you can see, as it is heating, or it is melting, it just creates this really pretty darker background. And then I will show it in light after I'm done melting all of that, but I want to make sure it's all good and melted. And it's beautiful. I love this stuff. It's so pretty. I'm trying to think of other ways to use it. I know Jennifer McGuire had done something with this embossing powder, I don't know, quite a while back, but this is one of my first real opportunities to get to use it, I think, and I really like how this looks. So I'll show you how it looks, just kind of flashing it in the, isn't that pretty? Oh, like it a lot. So now my background, my card panel, I have decided to use some black cardstock. So I have scored that at 5.5 inches. So it's a top folding A2 size card. It was originally 4 1/4 by 11 inches. And I am going to use that as my background. And I'm going to use that same mirrored cardstock that I had cut out from the previous card. So I'll go ahead and adhere my card panel to my card base, just using some liquid glue. And you could write on the inside with like a gel pen or something, but I have some of that same smoke cardstock. This is a light gray cardstock that I'd used. Some of that same smoke cardstock that I'm going to use for the inside. But for my images, I'm using some of that cream cardstock once again. This is the Nina Cream. And I stamped that out using some Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I'm also going to stamp the sentiment as well. And I stamped it in the middle at the bottom because I wasn't sure how much of it I wanted to show. So I'll end up trimming that down pretty well. I didn't color this image. You could, but I just decided I really liked the silver, black, white kind of theme I was going with. So I did use that same Jelly Roll Clear Star on just some of the parts of the image. And I think that turned out really pretty. It's very subtle. So this is the inside I was talking about. I used that same smoke cardstock and I stamped Having a Roaring Good Time on the inside. I have matched up my die on my image, ran that through my Sizzix Sidekick, and then I'm going to start adhering all those pieces to the front. I'm going to use some liquid glue on the mirrored piece, and then I will end up using some foam tape on my little image and the sentiment as well once I get that all squared away. So I have that where I want it. I'm going to start putting that foam tape all over the back, and then I'll peel off the backing paper, and then I will adhere that over the mirrored cardstock. That stuff is really pretty. I'll trim down my sentiment because I decided I don't want it to go all the way across. And then I will back that with some foam tape as well once I've trimmed that down some more, and then I'll stick that down. And then I'll also adhere that into the inside of my card using that same liquid glue. So that's what my inside will look like. And then as a final bit of embellishment, I will use both the black and the gold all over that background using my same crystal katana along with the liquid glue just to adhere all those down. And once that's done, this card is done as well. So easy peasy how that one turned out. Let's go ahead and take a look at the final, or the final 5 cards that I made. I would love to know which one of these was your favorite if you had one. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. If you liked this video, hit the like button. And as always, guys, I do appreciate you stopping by and leaving some love. Thanks, guys.